Hello, everyone. My name is Eleanor Harrington, though back when this all started, I was just Eleanor Thompson, a 28-year-old architect fresh out of grad school in London. I grew up in a modest flat in the East End, the daughter of a school teacher and a bus driver. Nothing fancy, but we were happy. I worked my tail off to get where I was, designing sleek, modern buildings that blended old-world charm with new-age efficiency. That's how I met my husband, James. He was from this old aristocratic family, the Harringtons, with roots going back centuries. Their family manor was this sprawling estate in the misty countryside of rural England, about 2 hours outside London by train. It was like something out of a Jane Austen novel. All stone walls, manicured gardens, and drafty halls filled with portraits of stern ancestors staring down at you. James and I met at an architecture conference in the city. He was there representing his family's trust, looking to renovate parts of the manor without losing its historic vibe. We hit it off right away. He was charming, kind, with that easy British politeness that makes you feel special. We dated for about 18 months before he proposed. It was romantic. Down on one knee, in Hyde Park, under a blooming cherry tree. I said yes without a second thought. Little did I know that marrying into the Harringtons meant dealing with his mother, Lady Beatrice. Oh, where do I even start with her? Lady Beatrice was the epitome of old money snobbery. She was in her late 60s, tall and imposing, always dressed in tailored tweed suits or silk blouses with pearl necklaces that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Her hair was perfectly coiffed in a silver bob, and she had this way of looking at you over her half-moon glasses that made you feel like you were being dissected. From the moment James introduced me as his fiancée, she made it clear I wasn't welcome. At our first family dinner at the manor, she barely acknowledged me. We were sitting in this grand dining room with a long oak table that could seat 20, crystal chandeliers twinkling above, and servants, actual butlers and maids serving courses on fine china. Beatrice sat at the head, sipping her sherry, and when James mentioned my work on sustainable designs, she just sniffed and said,
"How quaint. We Harringtons prefer timeless elegance over these trendy fads."
Her voice was clipped, like she was addressing a servant who'd spilled the tea. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just protective of her son. But as the wedding plans ramped up, her disdain ramped up too. We got married in a small ceremony at the local church near the manor, with about 100 guests, mostly her side. Of course, I wanted something simple, but she insisted on all the pomp, horse-drawn carriages, a string quartet, and a reception in the ballroom with champagne fountains. During the toasts, she stood up and said, "To my dear James and his charming bride, may she learn the ways of our heritage." The way she paused before charming made it sound like an insult. My friends from London whispered to me later, "Is she always like that?" I laughed it off. But inside, it stung. After the honeymoon, a lovely week in the Cotswolds, we moved into the manor. James's father had passed away years earlier, so Beatrice ruled the roost. The place was huge, with over 30 rooms, creaky wooden floors, and fireplaces big enough to stand in. My studio was set up in one of the wings, where I could work on my projects, but Beatrice made sure I knew I was an outsider. She'd criticize everything. At afternoon tea, which she insisted on every day at 4 o'clock sharp, she'd eye my casual jeans and sweater and say,
"Darling, perhaps something more appropriate for the drawing room."
I'd smile and change into a dress, but then she'd nitpick my choice. "That color washes you out, dear. Comes from your background, I suppose." Her barbs got sharper over time. She'd whisper to guests during parties, old family friends, lords and ladies from nearby estates about my plebeian upbringing. I'd overhear things like, "Poor James," slumming it with a girl from the wrong side of the tracks. Once, at a garden party with about 50 people milling around the rose bushes and croquet lawn, she introduced me as Eleanor's from London. You know, the working class part. I felt my cheeks burn, but I held my tongue for James's sake. He adored his mother, and any time I mentioned her comments, he'd say,
"Give her time."
But the real trouble started when James asked me to help with renovating the east wing of the manor. It was falling apart, leaky roofs, outdated plumbing, the works. As an architect, this was my dream project. I drew up plans for eco-friendly updates, solar panels disguised as roof tiles, better insulation to cut down on those massive heating bills, and modern kitchens that still looked period appropriate. I presented them to the family over dinner one night. James was thrilled. But Beatrice? She tore them apart.
This is vandalism.
Waving her fork like a scepter. You'll ruin the soul of this house with your glass and steel nonsense. Harringtons have lived here for generations without such gimmicks. Her eyes were cold as the stone walls outside. Not content with just words, she started tampering. I'd leave my blueprints in the study, and they'd come back with changes notes in her elegant handwriting suggesting traditional alterations that would make the whole thing impractical. Once, she accidentally spilled red wine on a set of drawings right before a meeting with contractors.
Oh, how clumsy of me.
She said with a smirk. The contractors looked at me like I was incompetent, and we had to delay the project by weeks. I confronted her privately in the library, surrounded by shelves of leather-bound books that smelled of age and dust.
Why are you doing this?
Why are you doing this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She just smiled serenely and replied,
You'll never understand the weight of our heritage, dear. It's not for the likes of you.
That was the breaking point. I started to see her for what she was, a bully hiding behind titles and traditions. But I didn't lash out. Instead, I got smart. I began exploring the manor more, poking into rooms that were off limits, like the attic. It was a dusty maze up there, filled with trunks of old clothes, faded photographs, and stacks of yellowed letters tied with ribbons. One rainy afternoon, while James was in town and Beatrice was at her bridge club, I snuck up there with a flashlight. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, just something to understand her better or maybe leverage. That's when I found it, a bundle of letters hidden in a false bottom of an antique chest. They were from decades ago, addressed to Beatrice in a man's handwriting. As I read them, my heart raced. They detailed a passionate affair she'd had while married to James's father. The lover was a stable hand on the estate, someone far below her station. There were dates, intimate details, even mentions of secret meetings in the very gardens where she hosted her parties. If this got out, it would shatter the family's pristine reputation. The Harringtons prided themselves on purity and propriety. Tabloids would eat it up. Lady's scandalous secret. I didn't act right away. I photocopied the letters on my office printer and hid the originals back where I found them. For months, I endured her snipes, biding my time. She'd mock my cooking at family meals, simple dishes like shepherd's pie that I made from scratch, saying,
This is what passes for cuisine in your circles?
or she'd exclude me from decisions about the estate, telling James, your wife wouldn't know the difference between Chippendale and IKEA. All the while, I smiled and planned. Finally, the opportunity came. Beatrice was hosting her annual charity gala, inviting all the local elite. I knew the fallout would be sweetest then. Anonymously, I mailed copies of the letters to a sleazy tabloid in London, the kind that thrives on aristocratic dirt. I used a post office in a nearby village, wearing a hat and sunglasses like some spy thriller. A week later, the story broke. Front-page headlines screaming about Lady Beatrice's forbidden love affair. The gala was ruined, guests whispered behind fans. Some even left early. Beatrice's face went ashen when she saw the papers. Her social circle crumbled fast. Invitations to teas and hunts dried up. Old friends stopped calling. She became a recluse in her own home, pacing the halls like a ghost. One tense family dinner, with just the three of us at that massive table. She finally broke.
How could you?
She gasped, her voice trembling, tears in her eyes for the first time. I looked at her calmly, folding my napkin, and said,
I simply preserved the truth of our heritage, Mother.
James was shocked, but when I showed him the letters, he understood. He didn't condone what I'd done, but he saw how she'd pushed me.
These are all for you.
Oh, I see now.
In the end, Beatrice moved to a smaller cottage on the property, her power broken. When James inherited the manor fully after her passing a few years later, there was no challenge. I transformed it into a modern haven, solar-powered. Open spaces. A blend of old and new that drew visitors from afar. My revenge was quiet, but it echoed through those halls forever. That's just the start of how it all unfolded. But looking back, it shaped who I am today.